So in this video, as you guys already know by the title, I'm gonna rank every current UFC champion, and I'm gonna rank them based on accomplishments in recent years. So not what they did like 10 years ago, I'm talking very recent, like 3 years max. And obviously I'm gonna have John Jones at number 8, cause this dude hasn't done anything in recent years besides beating Gon and yapping on Twitter. He literally sat out for 3 years waiting until Ngannou left the UFC so he could make his move to heavyweight. And before those 3 years, he took Anthony Smith to a decision, which, I mean, you're the GOAT and you take Anthony Smith to a decision? Come on, man. Arguably lost to Santos too, and definitely lost to Reyes. It's one of the clearest title robberies in my opinion. I mean, even the Jones Glazer himself admitted that he thought Dominic Reyes won that fight. But that was before his glazing era. In the John Jones glazing era, Dana White is trying to paint him up like he's the Michael Jordan of MMA. Just so they can say that the UFC had the greatest fighter of all time and that there will never be another one like him. And you could very well argue that he is the GOAT of the sport if you include testing positive, but recently he just hasn't been doing much. As I said in my last video, he's been more active outside the cage than inside the cage. Plus, he's also the undisputed heavyweight champion when it comes to ducking. Now at number 7 I have Pantoja, and Pantoja has actually been putting in decent work. Took out Moreno to win the belt and then he went on to defend against Royval. The problem is that he should have lost to Usyk, man. Usyk clearly beat him according to the scoring criteria, which is based on damage. But besides the fact that he should have lost to Usyk, he does have some pretty good recent wins like against Perez and the base one with no cap. But regardless, at number 6 I have Belal, and this guy's actually been putting in some good work. His win against Edwards is obviously his best win. He's a former champion and has a very good resume. Edwards beat Usman back to back and Kobe, but Kobe was fighting like a coward in that fight, so I don't know if it really counts, but regardless, Belal basically Belaled Edwards, and actually he's been Belaling everyone he's fought except like Sean Brady. And besides beating Edwards, he doesn't really have that many super good wins, don't get me wrong. Brady is a good win, Wonderboy is a good win, Burns is a good win, Luke is a good win, but none of those wins are really against the crop of the cream guys in the division, so that's why I can't put him higher up. Now at number 5 I have Ilia Topuria, and I think Ilia does deserve a pretty high spot. Ilia has a pretty decent resume, not the best one, but a pretty good one. His most notable recent wins are the wins against Mitchell, Emmett, and of course Volkanovski. Now Mitchell and Emmett are good wins, but they're not anything crazy. But the Volkanovski win is a different story, okay? I personally think Volk is the best featherweight of all time, and that's why I think Topuria goes above all the previous champions on this list. But his recent resume is still lacking a little bit, but he's very young and he's just now gonna get to defending his belt. Now at number 4 I have Sean O'Malley, and the reason I have him above Topuria is because Topuria beat Volk after Volk was coming off a brutal knockout loss, and the Topuria fight was like 4 months after. Now O'Malley has done some pretty impressive things recently in his career. First he beat Petr Yan, arguably though it was a very competitive fight. But then he beat Aljo, and even though I don't like Aljo, people forget, man. Aljo was racking up some very good title defenses against Yan, Dillashaw with one arm, and Cejudo, and honestly you could have said he was on his way to become bantamweight GOAT. But then O'Malley absolutely flatlined the guy, and he also went on to put on a masterclass against Vera. Now Vera isn't the best opponent, but I'd still say he's probably a better win than Mitchell is. And I'd probably also say that a Yan and Aljo win is worth more than an Emmett and a Volk win. Especially if you take into consideration that Volk came off a brutal knockout loss. But anyways guys, moving on to number 3. I think this is where it gets a little complicated. Number 3 and 2 are interchangeable in my opinion, but I have DDP at number 3. And hear me out guys. DDP has had some really good recent wins. First off, we can start off with a Whitaker win. Whitaker's like top 3 greatest middleweights of all time. He has some really solid wins throughout his career and some very good performances against the best guys in the division. When Whitaker's fighting, he's literally schooling those guys too. And Drukas took him out inside 2 rounds. Now, his next fight was against Strickland, and I've seen a lot of Strickland fans saying this was a robbery. I think it's crazy to say that. Like, it was one of the closest title fights in history. Now, when I last watched that fight, I leaned more to DDP winning, because I thought Strickland landed more, but DDP was landing the harder shots overall. But then again, I didn't watch that fight counting strikes and stuff like that, like someone like the Weasel would do. So I might be wrong, but that was just my thoughts. But regardless, that's still a win on paper. And regardless, it was still a very good performance at that. And after that, he also beat Adesanya, who's arguably the best middleweight of all time, either him or Anderson Silva. But anyways, a very good win, and I think that currently, if you don't include DDP, the 3 best middleweights are Strickland, Whittaker, and Adesanya. So that means that this guy has beat the 3 best fighters in his division. One of them are top 3 middleweights of all time, and one of them is arguably the best middleweight of all time. So this guy's been racking up some very impressive accomplishments recently in his career. And that's why I can't put this guy lower than the number 3 spot. Now, if you want to include the accomplishments of kissing his coach, this guy would be at number 1, okay? But I thought it would be unfair to the other fighters on this list, so I decided not to include it. Now, at number 2, I have Alex Pereira. And Alex Pereira has been putting in some crazy work in his very short UFC career, and especially at light heavyweight. First of all, he beat Blachowicz in his light heavyweight debut, which is a very good win. Then he knocked out Jiri, then knocked out Hill, and then knocked out Jiri again. And these are also cream of the crop wins. Jiri, Hill, and Blachowicz are definitely top 5 light heavyweights right now. And he knocked 2 of them out. So he has some very good stripes at light heavyweight. And if you want to include middleweight achievements, it's even more impressive. Knocked out Strickland, which aged very well. And then he also finished Adesanya. But I don't really think it's that fair to include wins from another division, to be honest. It would be like DDP kissing his coach. But if you want to include that, I think there is a good argument for him being number 1, and it will really solidify his ranking over DDP. And the reason I have him over DDP is because DDP's win over Strickland was so close. Like I said, I thought DDP won that fight, but you can make some really good arguments to why Strickland should have won that. And Pereira doesn't really have any fights like that at light heavyweight. I know people are going to be like, well, the Blachowicz win was a robbery. No, it wasn't. I watched that fight back, and I thought Pereira definitely won that 3rd round. But anyways, guys, let's move on to number 1, which you guys probably guessed by now, Islam Makhachev. Now, let me tell you about this guy. Islam Makhachev is a really good fighter. Now, first of all, he beat Charles Oliveira, who is arguably the most accomplished fighter at lightweight, and definitely one of the best lightweights of all time. I'm talking like top 3 easily. Like before Oliveira lost to Makhachev, he beat the best lightweights at the time, Chandler, Dustin, and Gaethje, and he beat all of those guys by finishing them. And as an Oliveira fan, it hurts to say this, but Makhachev beat him fairly easy, which is crazy considering Oliveira is one of the best lightweights of all time. And after that fight, he also had his fight with Volk, who's very clearly, in my opinion, the best featherweight of all time. And the Volk fight was an absolute war, you guys. Which was crazy because people were severely underestimating Volk in the lead up to that fight, because he's a very small lightweight. But, you know, he really made it close with Makhachev. And at the time I thought Volk won, which looking back on it, I was wrong. I think the fact that Volk was such an underdog made it so everything of significance that he landed and he did in that fight was amplified in the eyes of the fans. Because watching back that fight, I definitely thought Makhachev won. But regardless, they had their rematch, but Volk took that fight on very short notice and got absolutely destroyed by a head kick from Makhachev, which really hurt me as a Volk fan, but at the same time, very impressive by Makhachev. And then he also beat Dustin Poirier, who's one of the best lightweights in the world. And this fight wasn't super easy for Makhachev. Dustin did land some solid shots, but at the end, Makhachev submitted him. So Makhachev has been racking up some really crazy achievements. Now, I know people are gonna be like, but Dricus also beat the best middleweights of all time. And yeah, that's true, but the skill level at lightweight is so much higher than it is at middleweight. I mean, middleweight is literally notorious when it comes to being a division with a low skill level. And another argument to discredit Makhachev is to bring up that Volk isn't even lightweight, and Makhachev still made it close, so that would mean he sucks. And that would be very discrediting towards Volk too. Volk made it so close because Volk is just that good, he's just that guy. Islam literally beat one of the best lightweights of all time, so it's pretty obvious that this guy is next level. So Volk making it close shouldn't be used to discredit Makhachev, it should actually be used to actually credit Volk for being such a good fighter. Now this list was obviously a very big joke. The best champion is of course Belal Muhammad, so forget everything else I said in this video. But I think that's it for today, guys. Check out my last video where I ranked every current UFC champion based on how entertaining they are outside of the cage. But anyways, Please subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment if you disagree or agree with my rankings. And also don't forget to share this video to every single MMA fan you know. And I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.